This is Thomas Romain, French artist living in Japan, mostly known for his work on anime, for example Oban Star Racers, Space Dandy, Carol and Tuesday or Skate Infinity. But most importantly, he's one of my biggest inspirations. He's also known for transforming his son's ideas into full-blown pro illustrations using watercolors. After some extensive research, mostly just watching his YouTube channel, I compiled a list of steps that he uses with almost every illustration. Step 1. Thumbnailing and sketching. Before starting any illustration, Thomas starts by defining the features of the characters and thumbnailing a few compositions. He tries to keep the original idea that his child has put on paper, but tries to give it a more well-designed look, kind of. And for that he uses sketches and thumbnailing. Step 2. Transferring the final composition. To transfer the final composition, he just uses a simple 2H pencil with lighter marks to put in the rough shapes and the rough composition, and then he does a second, more detailed pass with a softer 2B pencil that leaves darker marks. Step 3. Line art. For the line art, Thomas uses the Zebra Fude pen. It's a cheap permanent marker with a flexible nib. You can get them at I think he said 100 yen shops, right? I don't know, I've never been to Japan. But where I live, you can buy them. It is possible, but you only get you get 20 of them at once. And it costs like $25. That's way too much. And I don't even know whether I'll like it or not. So I decided, since I own a G Pen, I'll just use it, since it does pretty much the same thing, but it's a different tool and it's a little bit less convenient, but I should be fine. Step 4. Base colors. In this step, he just uses flat colors and mostly gradients and different shades of colors to add variety. Also, he just makes sure to leave white, as watercolor is translucent and not opaque, so you can't really remove it or add white highlights other than using stuff like gouache or acrylic, but he doesn't do that. Step 5. Shadows and form. In the last step, Thomas uses usually blue for the shadows, layering it over the flats to achieve this cell shading kind of look. Since watercolor is translucent, it acts similar to a multiply layer in Click Studio Paint or Procreate. And generally, his approach to watercolor is quite unusual, and it reminds me in many ways of digital coloring. My goals for this video are learning the watercolor, learning in general how to use color, because I usually just use black and white. Honestly, I just sketch and stuff, and that was always my comfort zone, and I hated it when my art teacher told me to use colors and stuff, and then we would use acrylic paints, and I just hated it. Honestly, I couldn't, right? And then I remembered that 7 years ago, when I was a kid, I got this watercolor. I don't even remember. It was cheap Chinese, made in China for a few bucks. There was a panda on it, and I drew these Pokemons, right? These Pokemon fan art kind of. I don't know. I just drew Pokemon with them, and I filled them out with the watercolor, and I loved it. And so I just wanted to do some watercolor again, and I remembered that I always watched his videos, and that's what I want to learn from him. Also, the line art, I just want to improve my line art. I love doing line art, and it's a big part of my art, and it isn't on par yet with his, so I just want to improve that one. For my master study, I chose the Tulip Brothers illustration, as it looked quite simple, just a few gradients, some layering, and that's it. No hard backgrounds or intricate perspective, so to me it looked doable. And don't get me wrong, I wish I could illustrate something like this or this, but this is my first time using watercolor since I was 12, and I don't think I'm capable of doing that yet. So I chose the easier one. And in the background I already finished the sketch, so let's get to the line art. Some of you are probably wondering, why is he burning his dip pen? And it's very simple. From factory there's an oil film on the tips, on the feathers, for transportation to prevent rust. And oil prevents the ink from sticking well to the dip pen, and it's not good for drawing. And so before you start drawing with a new feather, then you have to just remove this film, and there's many methods of it. I personally just burn it and then wipe it off, since this has worked best for me, but there are different methods. There are very many. For example, you should wash it with dish soap. Then there's also sticking it into a potato overnight, and I haven't tried it, maybe it works, but for me I just burn the tip and then wipe it off. Also, I think pretty quickly you will see that I was struggling and I am slowly losing my sanity, but in the end I logged in, and you know what? Anyways, here's the final. Okay, so let's start off with the coloring, and actually it was quite hard. Like, the thing I most struggled with was the gradients and also the mixing of the colors. I have like an hour long footage of mixing, and I had to cut it all out, but if I missed something, I'm terribly sorry. But it took me so long to mix those colors, and I just don't know why. And the gradients, like the first one, the tulip, it worked pretty well, but then the other ones I just messed all of them up, and they all look patchy and weird, and I don't know what I didn't use, what the technique was that I messed up. Maybe the edges they dried up too fast, or I didn't keep them wet. I genuinely. But once I finished doing that and mixed up some colors and actually started getting color down on the page, it was fun. Quite a lot of it actually. And I loved the last touches, but I'll get to that later. And you know what? I know that I sound like the When will you wear wigs? Will you wear wigs? I know, the accent. I'm sorry. Just don't write it in the comments. Also, while drawing this, I really noticed that watercolor is my new favorite medium, and I really love it, and I want to learn it. And before that, I never really used colors. I hated them, and while I was a kid, actually, I just, like everyone thought Copics are the holy grail, alcohol markers, blah 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 blah, right? And there's like different mediums, right? Digital is cool. I love people that draw digital, like many artists, right? But it doesn't work for me. I've tried. I use Procreate, I use Clip Studio Paint. I tried for years, but it just didn't work for me. Then I switched to, like in school, like I said, acrylics. I had to use acrylics. My teacher was kind of telling us to do it, and every single piece just turned out bad, and I didn't like the opacity, how fast it dries and everything. I just didn't like it. Then I thought, okay, Copics, they're the holy grail. All mangaka illustrators use it. Death Note mangaka, he uses it, those guys. And then I remembered Thomas Romain. He does illustrations that look like Copic markers without all of the downsides. There's no not cheap. The watercolor is cheaper. That's what I mean. The watercolor is cheaper than Copics. Copics are expensive, and all of their downsides are, for example, you have a wide range of Copic markers with the colors, but that costs like $2,000-$3,000. I don't know how, but it's costly to get all of the colors. With watercolor, you can mix your own colors. Yes, it's annoying and it takes some time, but it's cheaper. With watercolor, you can achieve the same cell shading look that you can achieve with Copics, but way easier in my opinion. And I used alcohol markers, and I also have Copics, well, only 3 of them. It's like a small set with a few gradient colors, but I noticed that I didn't really like them. I also tried out a few at my school. We had some, and I was disappointed. I don't know, it was way harder to mix the colors than with watercolor, and just making gradients was so awkward. You need special paper, then you need to, when you paint with Copics, you need to be wary of the alcohol and everything turning gray. Then you have to wait for it to dry, you have to act fast. Also, Copic caps, they crack and then the marker dries out, so they're expensive because they're refillable and they're high quality, right? But then you paint with them, you try to be fast, you crack the cap, or you even be gentle with them and still crack the cap, and then it's just over. And if you don't want the cap cracking, okay, buy chows, Copic chows, right? But they have less colors, they have less ink. There's a bunch of downgrades and downsides, so the fact that you can achieve almost the same kind of look, maybe even better look, in my opinion, with watercolors, that's just perfect for me. So I decided I gotta do watercolor. So this red tulip was a real problem for me. I don't know why, but during the sketching I messed up. It just looked crooked and didn't make any sense, like how the tulip character was hanging on the pot and stuff, and it just, I don't know why, but it just looked off. And then during the inking I messed up one of the arms and the clothing, and now it looks even worse. And then during painting I messed up the gradient, and then when I tried to paint in those annoying stubby little arms, turns out the red wasn't dry enough, even though I waited like 2 or 3 minutes, and the green started mixing into the red and it started turning brown, and yeah, that's like the most horrible part about this whole painting. I hate it. Back to the topic of watercolor versus Copics. Of course, watercolor also has downsides, like the same way that Copics need special marker paper, you need watercolor paper with watercolor. Otherwise, it just doesn't really work. because the paper gets wet and it doesn't absorb the colors and water and stuff, and you can't really layer. And watercolor isn't perfect, right? But for me, it's the perfect medium, if you get what I'm trying to say. And I was just disappointed by Copics. I guess it was just YouTube hyping up Copics that much, or I don't know. And yeah, I'm just really happy about watercolor, about finally finding my medium. And I also tried out acrylic markers, which actually I really like them. They're cool, but it's just the fact that I really love to do line art, and then an opaque medium for color doesn't really make sense, because I would just love to just go over the lines without filling them completely, like having to redo the line art, or just having to do the colors first and then do the line art second. It's kind of just awkward, if you know what I mean. So yeah. Oh yeah, here you can see another of mine. I wanted to paint the little one's mouth in, right, like the little baby tulip, but I didn't wait enough. I waited like 5 minutes, but I guess because I used so much water to create the gradient from the pink to the white of the paper, it just wasn't dry enough. And then I tried to color in the mouth and it started bleeding, so here I use a paper tissue to pick up the paint. So while it's still wet, you can actually fix problems, and I fixed it, and then I just went over it again later. Now I just keep filling in the rest of the characters in flat colors, and here you can see me mess up again, another time. Who would have guessed it? Because I went in and mixed up a different shade of green and went over the leaves again, but as I later realized, turns out it was just multiple layers of shadow that Thomas Romain used in the original. And once I realized that, I switched just to doing the shadows, and I went over the leaves with a first pass of blue for the shadows, and then I went over with a second pass for the darker shadows. Now these last few layers really bring the whole painting together. Like, I don't know why, it just feels like magic. It's just the shadows really give it a form and shape to this 2D flat looking. Yes, there's some variation, there's some gradients, but it just doesn't pop out of the page yet, you know? And then these last few layers, they're just so beautiful. I just love it. Especially when you just speed it up and it's like very fast, and you see like the painting transform in like a few steps, and like a very few steps, it just looks so nice. I don't know why, but I really liked it, and this was like maybe the most enjoyable part. I don't even know. I enjoyed the whole process, although I struggled mostly a lot, but somehow I still kind of enjoyed it. There were parts I didn't enjoy, there were parts I did enjoy, but I think I will do a next one. I probably will try to do a more complicated one, probably another master study. But I'm also kind of afraid of starting to become like known only for doing this stuff. But it's just a few videos. I just want to learn the techniques, get more comfortable, and then apply it to my own art. And yeah, maybe I'll start doing OCs, maybe some my own illustrations. Maybe I'll do some Pokemon again. That would also be really cool. Or maybe I just, yeah, I don't know. Now for the 2 white flowers that the red tulip is holding on the left side of the illustration, I used Payne's Gray with a touch of blue. The same color that I used for the flowers that I also used for the drop shadows of the whole painting. Okay, so here's the final, and honestly, I'm quite proud of the result, but there are quite a lot of things annoying me. For example, the crooked line art, the messed up gradients, the lack of nuance that mine is somehow missing. It's just something about the original. It just looks more 3-dimensional, I guess. But then I remember that this is my first time using watercolor after a long break, and I didn't even expect my study to look remotely close to the original, so I think this is kind of a success, but let me know what you think in the comments. Oh, by the way, before I forget it, this is my first ever YouTube video, and if you wanna continue following my art journey or just like my content in general, like the video, then feel free to subscribe, and hopefully I'll keep posting. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.